everyone, welcome back to my channel, Funke Christian. As you can see, this video looks very different. This is the first video my husband and I are doing together on the channel. And so, yeah, let me introduce my husband, Christian.
Hello everyone, really excited to be here.
If any of you have watched my previous videos, then you know some of my story. You know that I became a born-again Christian at the age of 30. I got married at the age of 35, and my husband and I have been married now for 14 years, and we've got 4 children. And in a lot of the videos, a lot of you have commented that you would like to hear my husband's own story and hear things from his perspective, and also to hear from a Christian guy his thoughts and opinions on Christian dating. So in today's video, we thought that we would talk to you about how we met, because actually there is more to the story than what I've shared in previous videos. And we just kind of talk about the lessons that we learned, because we did learn a lot during that period. And also I'll be asking my husband some questions about Christian dating, kind of using our relationship and our dating as a sort of example, I guess. So more than anything else, I think we really hope that whether you're married or single, a Christian woman or a Christian man, that you will find the video helpful, and it will also show you how God works in every area of our lives to bring us to the right thing at the right time. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is how we actually first met, because what I remember as our first meeting apparently is not the first time we met. So in my previous videos I had mentioned that, you know, I met Christian when a group of friends went out to the cinema for an outing, but apparently we had met a lot before that. So I am going to let Christian take it from here, because to be honest, I don't remember the first time we met.
Okay. Well, look, the first time we actually met was many years before that. It was sort of on the party scene back then. I wasn't really a practicing Christian, and neither was Funke at the time. Yeah. I remember seeing her and I thought, wow, she looked so attractive. Anyway, she was with a couple of friends. I somehow got her number. I chatted a little bit, but you know, that was that. Not a whole lot happened. I did get in touch after that, but again, she wasn't particularly responsive, but you know, I sort of gave it my best shot.
Do you remember how old we were?
I would say probably late teens.
Wow.
I would say late teens, so probably sort of 19. You were the first person I ever sent flowers to. I sent I sent my wife a bunch of flowers. I suspect she either didn't get the flowers or
never did. Yeah.
Never attributed them to me.
Yeah, I never got the flowers, I have to say that now. And I think, you know, we've talked about this before, because you sent them to my university. And I think you put my name, but then you didn't know where I was, you know, where I was, my residence, or where I was living on campus. And it's funny because I remember that Valentine's that you said you sent them, actually talking to the campus kind of porter or security guard, because they call them porters in some universities, and sort of really sort of lamenting to him that I did not receive anything for Valentine's. And he was saying to me, he said, oh, you know, look, don't worry, someone may have sent something and it may have gotten lost somewhere. And I just felt that he was trying to encourage me, but I just thought, how is it possible for anyone to send something to me and it gets lost? But apparently someone did, and I never got the flowers. So I think there's a lesson learned here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, address things properly for starters.
And also, I guess on the other side, that, yeah, God was already working, because I genuinely do not remember the first time I met my husband, and I never got the flowers. But obviously, God was already doing a work concerning our story. The next thing it would be good for us to talk about is our lives, what our lives were like before we started dating. If you've watched some of my videos, you will know that, I met Christian properly that I can remember when I was 33. And at that time, I had been a born again Christian for 3 years. And I hadn't been dating for a couple of years. And I wasn't in that period actually doing much socializing. And in fact, when we did meet that time, I was sort of at the tail end of a 40-day fast. And I talk more about the fast in my video, How I Met My Husband, Surprisingly and Unexpectedly, if you would like to hear more about that. But basically, at that time, I just did not think I was going to meet anyone. So I just thought this is a season just for me and for God, and marriage or dating is not in it at all. So it was actually a big surprise. What was your life like before we started dating?
Before we started dating, I gave my life to Christ. I dedicated my life to Christ, I would say ballpark 13.
13.
Over a period of time, I kind of fell away from the faith almost entirely. I then rededicated my life to Christ, I would say about 10 years later, and I got into a serious relationship at the time, and we eventually broke up. And truth be told, I really was not expecting to meet anyone either when I saw Funke again. I had a period where I thought, actually perhaps I don't need to be with anyone. I could just really serve God on my own. But I sensed God very clearly telling me that I wouldn't feel that way later on, and I don't think I could have done that. And then I thought, okay, let's start this. Where do I even begin? I suddenly thought, okay, the various women I knew in church, and I started to sort of look at each person slightly differently. I went out on a few dates, which didn't really amount to anything. And at times I struggled with it, because I found myself at times attracted to people sort of outside of the faith. I knew quite clearly that those would never go anywhere, so there was really no point in pursuing those, because I would just end up hurting them and myself.
I just wanted to ask 2 questions.
Okay.
One, because you said that, and I know I get these comments on questions a lot, like some singles feel that if they are still single, it's because God wants them to be single. And they may sometimes feel like, okay, that's actually, I want to please God, so maybe I should stay single and not desire marriage anymore. Yeah. But you say when you kind of offered God your sort of, I will be single for you, God kind of said, actually, no, I don't want you to be single for me. Or is that...
Yeah, no, that's quite accurate. Offered God my celibacy, shall we call it?
Yeah.
I think God let me know quite clearly that actually I wasn't equipped for that.
Yeah. So God was not basically saying, oh, you're still single because I want you to stay single. It was more like, no, it's not that I'm calling you to a single life or to a life of celibacy.
Well, it was a transient period in my life. It was something I needed to pass through in order to get here, to get where we are now.
So now I think we're both going to talk about what were we looking for in a person to be in a relationship with. I think the most important thing to me then was someone that was a committed, born-again Christian. And it was because of the experiences that I had had previously. So I knew that there was no point in even sort of trying to date someone that didn't share my faith. And I knew that I wanted to be in a relationship with someone where I could just be myself, talk about what I believed in, talk about my worries, and we could pray together. In terms of any kind of physical thing, I was not focused on any physical attributes that I wanted. I've mentioned this in a video before, but previously I had always wanted to end up with someone that was taller than me. Because I'm 6 foot, a lot of times there were guys that I liked, but they happened to be slightly shorter than me, and I always felt slightly conscious of it. But then God kind of worked in me and showed me that those things were not that important in the grand scheme of things. They were not the things that were going to determine how a person would treat me in a relationship, or how I would feel in a relationship. So by the time I met my husband, I had one major requirement: committed, born again Christian.
I think for me, at the time, I wasn't really thinking about who I was going to meet, or what she would look like, or etc. It just wasn't on my mind. One thing was clear: she would have to be a Christian, someone who had passion for the things of God. So I can't say that she had to be tall, or she had to be short, or she had to be or she had to be this nationality or that nationality. I don't think I was that bothered about those details. I knew whoever God gives me,
exactly,
the rest of the world will have to adjust to
exactly.
that. I'm not going to compromise.
Another question that I get is, a lot of Christian singles will meet someone and be concerned and think, wow, I'm not attracted to this person.
Okay.
But then they don't know whether to sort of say, well, this isn't going to work, and leave it, because they're worried that maybe I'm being too carnal.
Right.
And also they're worried that I don't want to get into a relationship and not be sort of attracted to this person.
Okay.
And so what do you think as a Christian man?
Only God can help you decipher what's what.
Yeah.
Where human emotion is involved, emotions are incredibly powerful, and they can
very fickle.
Yeah, and they can confuse us. I mean, look, emotion is wonderful in prayer, because that fuels prayer like nothing else. But in terms of making serious decisions, I think emotions can let us down quite badly, because they can change, and quite dramatically.
Yeah.
We have to seek God's guidance on who is best for us, not just for today, but for tomorrow and for every day. And He alone can guide us in that. And that's just the reality, because, if you asked my 20-year-old self what my 50-odd-year-old self would look like, or be like, or would be involved with, or would be doing, I think I'd have gotten it quite badly wrong. And only God can show you what He has for you. And I guess this is what I understood. And I had, in our relationship, I cried out to God. I wasn't going to go by attraction. Attraction was never going to be enough for me. I needed to know if God was in it.
So now we're going to talk about how we actually sort of first met, the meeting that led to the dating, which eventually led to marriage. One day, I think it was a weekend, a friend of mine called me and said, "What are you doing today? Do you want to go to the cinema in the evening? I have a friend that has come in from out of town, and he was just asking if anything was going on." And she did mention Christian, and I do recall having met Christian sort of a few days beforehand, very briefly at an event. And at that time, I was fasting. I was in the sort of near the tail end of a 40-day fast with God. And in that fast, God had spoken to me about being more intimate with Him, and not wearing makeup or hair extensions. And again, you can watch that video of how I met my husband for more information about that. So she kind of explained that actually the plan was to set Christian up with a mutual friend of ours. So for me, I saw going to the cinema as literally just going to watch a film and then coming home. And I had no idea, no expectations. I wasn't wearing any makeup or anything. And so I said, yeah, that would be quite nice. And I agreed to join. So I drove there later on that day to meet them at the cinema. And actually, by the time Christian got there, the film had already started. And so there was a group of us, and we didn't get to talk to each other until after the film when we were actually leaving the cinema. And it was really just out of sort of being polite to each other. Hi, how are you? And then he, chatted a bit. And it was in that chatting that something struck me about Christian. I don't know what it was. Something just like a spark went off or something, and we kept on talking. And to be honest, I think that if I was not fasting at that time, I may not have actually noticed anything. I may just have sort of had this polite conversation, gotten into my car and gone home. But I actually really feel that because I had been fasting, because I was more intimate with God, because I was just at peace and just happy with myself, had no expectations, it was easier for me to notice something about him. The only way I can sort of put it in words was that he's a really nice guy. And that was just kind of what caught my attention. And so they said, oh, we're going to go for drinks, and I think some salsa dancing afterwards. and I said, okay, well, and they said, come along. And I thought, okay, well, I'll come along. And I remember thinking at the salsa dancing that Christian was actually quite a good salsa dancer, but I was not keen on the top he was wearing. Very strange. And funnily enough, my friends thought that the top he was wearing was really nice, but they thought, his dancing could be better. But anyway, we continued talking, and then at that point when we were talking, I thought to myself, I would like to get to know this guy better. I think, went into my own strength and tried to do it on my own to sort of pique his interest about me. I had no idea of anything else. And I said, and I thought, the way let me sort of find out if he, I remembered, I don't know, but I think I knew you were a Christian. And I remembered, and I thought, oh, I want him to know I'm a Christian as well, so that his interest in me will be piqued. And I then said something about going to fellowship. And to be honest, the only reason I did that was because I think that in that moment, I didn't trust God enough to just take control and do whatever it was that he wanted to do. Later on, when Christian and I spoke about it, I think it was after we were married, and I mentioned that I'd said this just to get his interest. He said it wouldn't have made any difference because I was already interested in you. So on that note, I'm going to let Christian talk about his own take on the night we first met.
Okay. Well, thank you. Now, here's the thing. The thing at the cinema was something I instigated deliberately so I could get the chance to spend more time with you.
I didn't know that. I thought that the plan was apparently that you were to be set up with someone else.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize, I didn't ask to be set up with anyone. I just called a mutual friend, knowing that I wanted to meet you again, because we'd met at this, after all these years, this event. And I just thought, well, look, I would like to get to know her better. But so I didn't ask to meet you. I asked for an outing with a group of friends. Look, we chatted a little bit, and as you said, we then went to the salsa thing. At the time, I clearly wanted to dance with you. I wanted to spend more time with you. At the end of the day, we got along well, and so for me it was really exciting. I was really, I was pleased. I thought my dancing wasn't that bad, to be honest.
I thought it was okay.
And I really liked the shirt, which you never appreciated.
That was our first meeting, and I don't know about you, but the big lesson that I learned is God is already in control. Leave it with him. Don't allow anxiety to make you try and get things done on your own. I know it's not easy trusting God to, do things, even because you can't always see what's going on, but just trust that he will get it done. If that's his will, God will get it done. How did we start dating? After the cinema meeting, after the night of the salsa dancing, I think Christian and I met a handful of times after that. And each time, I think it was clear to both of us that we enjoyed being with each other, and that there was something that it was worth both of us exploring, getting to know each other better. I think the biggest challenge for us was that Christian lived in England at the time, and I was living in Nigeria at the time. And Christian had come home for Christmas holidays, and New Year's, he was back in England, back to work. We exchanged numbers and sort of, we'll keep in touch, kind of left it like that. And Christian then went back to England. And I initially had thought, that he would call within a couple of days. But then he didn't call. The first week went by, I didn't hear from Christian. The second week went by, the third week went by. And then after the third week, I did hear from him. And 3 weeks, it was a bit strange because when we'd spent time with each other, we'd really gotten on with each other. But I thought, what, I was at that place in my life where my trust was in God, and I knew that whatever God wanted for me, God would do it. I was no longer the sort of Christian single that would try and do everything on their own, even though I've just explained something I did do on my own. But on the whole, I just knew that I needed to trust God, and that was the best way to do things. So when I didn't hear from him, yes, it was a surprise, but I just thought, I'm not going to fret about it. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to leave it in God's hands. And I just took everything to God in prayer, and I just felt peace. God is in control, leave it. Maybe he's not the one, maybe this is not meant to be. And I felt that was fine, because I knew that either way, whatever happened, I was going to end up with the person that God had for me. So I was actually quite surprised when he called 3 weeks later, and my phone rang, and then I looked at it and saw this number, picked it up, and it was Christian. And so I was like, okay, that's a surprise. I didn't say anything, but we started talking. After that call, he called a lot more regularly. We started talking, and the next time he was back in town, we spent time with each other. And obviously, over time, I think it was just clear that we wanted to be in a relationship with each other. I don't remember if we ever had any conversation where it was like, will you go out with me? But I think it was very clear that we were in a relationship with each other. That's how I felt. I was very sort of comfortable, and I felt that he was also committed to the relationship as well. It was clear from spending time with him that he was not someone that was playing games. And the other comfort as well was that it took him 3 weeks to call. So I felt, well, whatever it was in that 3 weeks, he had gone through whatever he was going through, and once he started calling, he seemed very clear about what he wanted, and it would come up in conversations, commitment, want to get married at some point, looking for someone to be in a relationship with. It would just kind of come up into conversation naturally. And so, I knew that's kind of how I knew that, we're in a dating relationship.
Once I returned to the UK, once I left, I did sort of need to step back a little bit to be clear in my mind as to what I was actually doing. I felt I needed time and clarity to sort of work out what this was all about. The time was useful for me to sort of get my head straight.
Yeah.
And I think if you'd called, of course I'd have taken the call. But whether I would have been in the right place to then take that next step, I'm not sure. And it may not have helped, if I'm being entirely honest. I think if you called earlier, I would still have been unclear as to what this was all about, because I was kind of either going to be all in or all out. I valued the opportunity to sort of seek God on my own and just get my head right. So anyway, so once I did call, then it was
because you kind of, because I felt, and I guess this is why prayer is important. When I pray to God, I felt peace about just leave it to me, leave it to God. I felt God saying, leave it to me, just trust me. And so the reason I didn't call was not because I was playing games or because it was like, no, the guy has to call first. It was just more because I felt from prayer that actually I didn't need to just let go and let God.
And he was doing something, he was doing a corresponding work in me to sort of get me ready. And so invariably God is the one that sort of
knew
just
how
manages the whole thing, and he managed the whole thing for us perfectly. Now, it wasn't a case of that I came back in 3 weeks like, okay, right, I'm going to marry this woman. No, it wasn't as clear cut as that. I just felt ready to proceed. I felt ready to sort of at least reconnect, and then let's see where this thing goes. So I knew it was time to call. I made the call, and it was a great, it was great. It was just, we connected immediately.
I was not in any way, I did not feel in any way like, oh, so you're calling now. I was actually I was surprised, happy to hear from you, because I had, life had gone, I was just getting on with my life. So there was no sense of, any sort of annoyance or irritation or, don't think that you can just call me. So it was just like, hey, how are you? And we just kind of started talking straight away. So I didn't really, so I think that made it easier. So now we're going to talk about kind of, I guess, what was different in our relationship. The relationship with Christian was different to other relationships that I'd had previously. One of the big differences for me was that Christian and I could pray together, and I think that kind of brought us even closer together. We did not initially start by praying together, and I think that comes with time. You have to get to know the person, because prayer is very intimate, and if you do it with someone else, there has to be a reason, there has to be some type of relationship, especially when you're doing it with someone that you're dating. And it was just nice to know that if there was anything that was bothering me, work stuff or whatever it was, that I could sort of talk to Christian about it, and then we would pray together. So it wasn't always that I thought Christian would have all the answers that I needed. Usually what he would say, he would listen. He was actually a good listener, still is. And then he would say, let's pray. And that was always so nice, and we'd pray about it together. So I really enjoyed that. I had not had that in previous relationships. The second thing was that I felt like he did not judge me. I felt like I probably judged myself more than he did, and I probably had more sort of societal expectations of myself, but Christian did not have those. He didn't pigeonhole things or people, not just me, but generally. He's not a judgmental person. That was really nice, being in a relationship with someone that just kind of, who you are is who you are. They take you as who you are. And I think that helped me to be very sort of quite relaxed with him very quickly and open with him. And so it made it easier for us to have conversations. And I think that also helped the relationship to progress. It was always progressing. We never had times when we broke up. There was no stop and start. Once he called, it kind of progressed nicely.
So for me, the fact that we actually could pray together was obviously was a huge blessing. It wasn't my first Christian relationship. I had been in a Christian relationship. It was really important to me that Funke and I got on really well. We connected really easily. So praying was natural, because obviously we both appreciated this was the solution to any problem. We would take everything to God in prayer. And it wasn't forced, it wasn't contrived. It was just a natural, okay, you're worried about this, okay, let's pray about it.
Yeah, that's actually how we became, that was intimacy in the relationship, rather than in non-Christian relationships, I think the indication of intimacy is you start having sex. I think for us is that you actually start doing, your relationship with God, you start also
Sharing
doing
that,
it together.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I guess the next thing to talk about is, when did we start thinking about marriage? When was there a proposal? Who proposed? Yes, I think we'll talk about that next. There was never a time when I said to Christian, I'm ready to get married now. I think it was just always from sort of conversations that we had throughout the dating. I think it was just that I feel like there was that general understanding that as the relationship progressed, if we did not feel that actually this may not be right for us, that it would progress towards marriage.
I don't recall any specific time that we talked about marriage specifically at the beginning. In fact, one thing I do recall actually that I think is worth mentioning, there was one big issue for me, which was where we would live. If you recall, I asked that question very early on in the relationship. I asked because that was a key fact.
Yes, it was
something that,
for both of us,
yeah.
actually. Yeah.
And I think at the time I remember asking you, could you see yourself living in England?
Oh yes, I remember that. Yeah.
And your answer was, I thought, it was quite a good one, was that, yeah, with the right person.
Yeah, because I mean, at the time, I was living in Nigeria. I'd been to school in England, university, lived there. So since I was 9, so I was very familiar with England, and I had moved back after university to Nigeria, where my family was from originally, and I'd started working, and I was actually quite happy there. I had a good job, everything was good. I had my church, my fellowship group, and so there was a period where I did sense God saying, look, when you get married, you will go back to England. And I remember being a little bit concerned about that, because I'd made my life in Nigeria. So, but by the time I met Christian, that was something I had resolved with God. Again, it was about trust. God, I trust you with my life, and I know that whatever plans you have for me, they will always be for the best.
When I asked that question, truth be told, I think that would have been a deal breaker if you said, no, I can't live in England.
And it was clear later on that we needed to be, that was where God wanted us to be.
Exactly.
I guess now would be a good time for us to talk about, what we've learned. We've been married now for 14 years. And, what have we learned along the way that would be useful for Christian singles, Christian married couples, for anybody really? I would say the single most important thing that I did as a single that made a huge difference and continues to help me even now in marriage was my relationship with God. Having that season of singleness to get to know God, just me and him together, it was just amazing. I am so thankful that I had that. I got married at the age of 35. People consider that to be old. It isn't really, to be honest. But I'm thankful that I had that opportunity for me and God to get to know each other, because that is what helped me the most. And that is what prepared me so that when I met Christian, we were able to have like a really sort of good relationship. And my relationship with my husband, we're very close. We're like friends. We chat a lot, we talk a lot, we laugh a lot, we're silly together. And I think that is because when we came into marriage, we both came in sort of like complete people, because we had that relationship with God. So there was never this coming into marriage and having this expectation that my husband was going to be like fill up all these sort of holes in my life, or my husband was somehow going to heal any brokenness in me. I already had wholeness from God, but I also knew that any other brokenness that I may have discovered after I got married was only going to be healed really through God. Now, God could use my husband, and he has used him, but ultimately it has always been about God. Do not attempt to get married, have a relationship or anything without first going to have that relationship with God. That's when you really see who you are and how special you are. Because you are special to God, so that means you are special, full stop. Because you can never see yourself through other people's eyes. It's so, it changes. How other people see you changes. So yeah, that's my big advice.
Well, I think it's very good advice, because I obviously had to be complete as well. I had to be complete in Christ, and I did mention that I'd been in a serious relationship, Christian relationship prior, and so the end of that was very difficult, and I actually needed to be healed and to be whole before I could engage with anyone. Otherwise, I would have just come in with too much baggage, and it would have just weighed you down. I clearly wasn't ready to be with anyone, and I needed to just sort myself out, with God. And I had to spend time with God, and just find healing for myself first, and wholeness, and not just in terms of relationship, but in just as a person, and only then could I have come into a relationship without so much baggage as to weigh the whole thing down.
So that's our story. Thank you so much for listening to us. I've really enjoyed this. I hope you have as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've really, really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed, sort of working with my wife, doing this with my wife.
Walking down memory lane.
Yeah, absolutely. The memories, and just, it's actually been quite nice.
And I really want to say a big thank you to all of you for your amazing and supportive comments. It's really been a blessing to have this kind of social media, YouTube ministry. And I want to thank you all for your support. Thank you for watching. Thank you for checking up on me. Thank you for letting me know that the videos have been a blessing. It means a lot to me. If you have any questions, or you want us to maybe touch more on something that we talked about in the video, then please, put that in the comments below. And then we can either answer it in the comments, or we can put all the questions together for a future video.
Well, thank you so much for listening. Take care, and God bless.
God bless. Bye.
Bye-bye.